Hey, writers and readers, welcome to Manuscript Massacre. I'm MC, your master of ceremonies. Today we're going to be taking a look at Fangs with Needles, a short story looking like another horror. Should be proved to be entertaining. Let's see if they can do a little better with their prose and wordsmanship. As always, this is a first draft. They submitted it for critiquing, so don't judge them based on how it looks at the beginning. Let's see how they do after they clean things up a bit. As always, my critiques are brutal, but honest, but above all, constructive. If you enjoy these videos, don't forget to like and subscribe and ring the bell. And if you want to comment along with everyone live, check us out over on Twitch. So let's get massacring.
Fangs for Needles. Jake and Kyle were sharing a joint in Jake's Mustang when the spider leapt on Kyle's dad in the yard and dragged him away.
Well, that's a way to start a story. You know what? I'm not even mad. I'm kind of hoping this is a comedy now, because if it is, bravo. That is a way to start a comedy horror story. I mean, if you're trying to actually do a horror story, then maybe not so much. But I'm looking forward to a pretty funny, amusing tale here. Let's see what we can get.
Jake saw it happen out his driver's side window. "Holy crap," he said.
So here we can tweak the sentence a little bit. I think "holy crap" should be the next line before Jake saw it happen out his driver's side window. That's telling us what happened, and you don't even need that, because as soon as you say "holy crap," Jake said, we know he saw it. You could say after that, he stared out the side of the driver's side window, and that'll give you the stage direction, and that's fine. But "holy crap" is sufficient to tell us that he saw it.
"What?" Kyle answered, relighting the joint because it had gone out.
Okay. Nothing wrong with that. Well, depending on your perspective on things. But yeah, this definitely looks like to be a fun, entertaining horror comedy.
"Your dad just got bit by a big-ass spider."
Dude. Dude, where's my car? What about your car? What about your dad and getting eaten by a spider?
Tarantula? This was Needles, a desert town in California where tarantulas were commonplace.
And then you go ruin it with unnecessary exposition. You have the line "a tarantula." Space. Give us a new paragraph. Okay. Respond to that. No, dude, not a tarantula. Have it in dialogue then. You don't need the exposition. What? Tarantulas are all over the place here. What was it then? Okay, we don't need the tarantulas in California are commonplace, or the next sentence here, migrated thousands of miles, blah, blah, blah. We don't need to know a Wikipedia entry on tarantulas. People can Google that if they want.
Once a year, they migrated by the thousands from who the hell knows to God knows where. Though, it wasn't that time of year.
Yeah, again, wasn't that time? We don't need to. We don't care about that. Honestly, we have no interest in that. People who like spiders, they will Google it. Trust me.
Yeah, but the Sinuvovich was huge.
The Sinuvovich, I love it. Sometimes I love the way Word attempts fake words and just like Sinuvovich. That is going to be a new phrase of mine right there. Sinuvovich.
"Sure, my dad'll mash it under his shoe." Nope.
See how she read it? Actually, I should switch this to male voice. What are we doing here? Jake is, yeah, let's do male voice. But why are we... So you see the way the voice said, "Sure, my dad will smash it." That's because there's no comma. There should be a comma there. "Sure, comma, my dad'll smash it under his shoe." I'm not even sure that makes sense. Sure. Is it a question? Are you sure my dad'll smash it under his shoe? He got bit by a big-ass spider. Sure, my dad. Yeah, the wordsmithing here needs some TLC. That's not reading right to me. Try again. A tarantula? Going back all the way over there. It's like, no, dude, not a tarantula. Not everything in California is a tarantula. This thing was, this Sanuva bitch was huge. And then, dad'll smash it under his not my dad. Dad'll smash it under his shoe. No, man.
No, man. This spider's the size of, like, a Ford Taurus. You're high.
Yes, he is. Spiders like. All right. Like. I give out like. Like, totally, she was like, how she was like, all like, that is what you sound when you insert like in writing. Okay. You could do, the spider was the size of a Ford Taurus. That's fine. But if you wanted to go, maybe because he's high and whatnot, that spider was the size of, I don't know, a Ford Taurus. You could do that, but avoid those extra likes. If you're doing a simile, which I recommend metaphor over simile. Similes are usually a cop-out for you can't think of the right vocab word, so you're going to use a simile instead. Metaphors are better, but the occasional simile is fine. And in that case, the spider was the size of a Ford Taurus. That's an exaggeration, not a simile, not a metaphor. You don't need the like.
Not that high. I know what I saw.
Okay, you see how the writer here underlined not that high? That's when you're accentuating something. You want it to be italicized in formal writing. If you're submitting it to if you're submitting it to a publisher, for instance, a lot of times they require a specific kind of manuscript formatting, and you would replace italices with underline. So don't use underline in the final product. Underline just means italics, but you're submitting to a publisher. Do not put the underscore as the final formatting.
Kyle looked toward his yard but saw nothing but a hose lying by the palm trees his dad had planted that spring.
The palm trees his dad had planted that spring. Well, first off, we got passive voiced, had planted. Now, it's technically true. He's not in the middle of planting it, but why do we care that his dad planted those palm trees? He just got eaten by a spider or bit by a spider, whatever it was. Okay. You ever see My Cousin Vinny? It's like, you see the cute little deer and he's staring at you, and bam, the Sanuva bitch blows his brains out all over the road. Now, do you ask yourself, do you think he cares what the Sanuva bitch was wearing? Sanuva bitch, that's going to be my new favorite word from now on. Yeah, no, we don't need any of that. We could just say, Kyle looked at the yard, but not toward his yard. Kyle looked at the yard, but nothing was there but a hose lying on the ground near the palm trees. That's fine.
He better shut off that hose. He's wasting water.
No, nothing wrong with that. Well, yeah, actually, there is something wrong with it. He should shut that off. It is wasting water.
I think your dad's dead, man.
I think your dad's dead, ma'am. Or man.
Like, put its freaking fangs through his head.
Okay. I gotta say, this is pretty entertaining so far.
Kyle was getting irritated with his friend, who never quite got out of the habit of making up stuff since grammar school.
I guess if you're high, that that would be your reaction. Like, okay, come on, knock it off. But then again, you'd be like, dude, the spiders.
Kyle figured he just craved attention. You're full of crap. But Kyle could see Jake wasn't bullcrapping. The guy was seriously freaked out.
I may have tried to edit some of these swear words out. Sorry if I screwed up some of them. This particular piece apparently had a lot of profanity, and I tried not to get YouTube to ding me this early.
Maybe the pot was laced with acid or PCP, though Kyle felt fine. You're killing my buzz, dude.
Who's speaking here? There's no dialogue tags on this entire page. I have no idea. You're full of crap. No dialogue tag. You're killing my buzz, dude. No dialogue. Okay, dialogue tags. You don't need a dialogue tag on every line, but I at least need to get a good feel of the back and forth. There's only 2 characters here. So it's pretty clear that the first line should be from Kyle. The second line should also be from Kyle. And the first line should be from Jake. Okay. But because it's not in order, it's not Kyle, Jake, Kyle, I can't tell that without like examining the page. And that's just annoying. I'm going to give you here. I'm annoyed. Very, very annoyed. Dialogue tags. Oh, and while I'm at it, let me give my little spiel about dialogue tags. It's a very easy formula. There are 2 places it can go: before the dialogue or after the first clause. I didn't say sentence, I said clause. The clause is usually where a comma is, unless it's just like sure, comma, yada, yada. But even then, sure, comma, close quote, dialogue tag, period. Open quote, continue, or comma, open quote, continue your story. After the first clause is where the dialogue tag should go, or before the sentence. Those are the only 2 spots. Don't give me this like 3 or 4 sentences or this one long running sentence with 17 commas and then put a dialogue tag after it. I no longer care who's speaking by the time I got to the end. So that's all I'm going to say on that. Let's keep going.
I'm not kidding, man. That was when a tarantula the size of a Miata pounced on top of Jake's car and stabbed its fangs through the vinyl roof.
So many car references. First it was a what was it? A Ford Taurus, and now it's a Miata. I hope you really understand all the differences between these cars, so you can really judge what the difference is between those 2 spiders. Because clearly they're different now, because you picked a different car. I don't think we need the car references constantly. The first one was funny. Now it's just weird. But I love the 90s California stoner cliche speech. Because it's a comedy, I'm totally going to let you get away with it. I think that's fine for a comedy. Now, some Californians who are high may disagree if they weren't so high. Sorry.
The fangs, both the length of a person's arm, narrowly missed both of the teens, but punctured Kyle's stash he kept in a cigar box.
Not
Crap.
the stash, no. That's not bad. Let's keep going.
Kyle yelled, cowering away from the spider's tooth.
Tooth? It was 2 fangs who punctured, and fangs are not the same as teeth. Well, I mean, they can be, but at least I get it. You don't want to say fangs, 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 but I'm sure there's another synonym for fangs that you can look up. Mandibles. There's your cinnamon. Cinnamon. Blech. There's your synonym. because I can speak words. Yeah. Avoid the spider's mandibles. That's fine.
It was brown and smooth and reminded Kyle of a thorn.
Okay. Sometimes, it's important to describe things, especially as they are relevant. And the spider's fangs are definitely relevant in this scene. But brown and smooth is not what I would picture when you have that split-second reaction. My split-second reaction would be long and sharp, and would be, get it away from me, or get me away from it. Not, ooh, it's so smooth, and what a shade of brown. This is beautiful, you must floss. I don't think he's doing that to the spider.
Told ya. Jake's eyes were open wider than Lucy Trevise's legs.
Really? Really? Mr. Ryder, we need to have a talk. I know it's a comedy, but man, dude. I'm gonna say dude because this, it's clearly a male individual who wrote this, but wow. You know what? I'm not even gonna argue. It's terrible. Shame on you. And I'm still laughing, so I can't exactly fault it, can I? If this is a comedy, and it clearly is, you do you, man.
Which would have been funny if not for the circumstances.
Yes, totally not funny given these circumstances. All of you who laughed, you're going straight to hell, man.
The tarantula retracted its mega...
You just said it wasn't a tarantula before. Well, if it's not a tarantula, you can't call it a tarantula now. You just don't want to say spider again because you're avoiding repetition. Good on you for avoiding repetition. But consistency. He said it wasn't a tarantula. As a matter of fact, I want... we were talking about relevant descriptions, okay? Maybe when you saw it in the yard and you're stoned out of your gourd and you just saw it puncture the fangs in his buddy's father's head, that's the moment to describe it. So it wasn't a tarantula. Okay. Oh, and I missed that before on the previous page. It says tarantula right there too. But yeah, since you said it wasn't a tarantula, describe it. Maybe it's not furry. Maybe it's one of those, like, the stuff of children's nightmares, like a golden orb weave spider. You ever Google those things in Australia? Yeah. I'm not visiting Australia anytime soon, at least not the bush. No, thank you. I'm good. If a spider can eat birds and snakes as its breakfast, I'm out.
Fangs, and Kyle guessed it was rearing for another attack. Start the car. Quick.
Microsoft Word again. Start the car. Quick. Technically it's quickly, but it is dialogue, so that's fine.
Jake keyed the ignition and hit the gas. The car lurched forward, then stalled. Bastard, growled Jake.
Okay. We'll talk about dialogue tags a little more here. Growled. Okay. A lot of writers try to do this where instead of just saying he said, she said constantly, or he asked, she asked, they try to put other words in place of it that give a little more... I applaud it when you're using it for verbs, when you're choosing better verbs so you can avoid adjectives and adverbs. But for dialogue tags, how do you growl bastard? Bastard! I don't think that's what he was doing. Growled is not the right word choice here. Yelled, shouted, screamed, those are all fine. Okay. But not growled. There was no growling from Jake.
The spider, spooked, bounded off the car. It scurried a few feet away, whirled around toward them and froze in.
Maybe he did growl if it spooked the spider. Bastard! Grrr! Grrr! The spider's like, this guy's high and nuts. I'm out of here.
Place, as if waiting for further instructions from Spider Base.
Come on, spider face. Okay, I have to admit, if this was a real story, I would be like tearing it to shreds because of stupid things like this. But I can't fault it. It's genius. It's hilarious.
What's it doing? Jake asked. Hell if I know. Another tarantula, this one the size of a mercury coupe.
Again with the cars. I don't know my cars. Can someone tell me what the difference is between a Miata, a Ford Taurus, and a Mercury Coupe is? Like, how are we judging size and scale here to change it up? I could understand if you said like a sedan, an SUV, a truck. Those make sense to just about everybody, but unless you're like a supercar person, really into knowing the differences between each of these. I mean, I know a coupe is a two-door, so I guess this one's smaller. We don't need the constant car references. The first one was fine, Ford Taurus, because everyone's just going to assume Sedum. Again, English speakingly good. Aye. But generally speaking, most people, if you hear Ford Taurus, is just going to assume a sedan of some kind, and that's fine. And then everything after that, you're just making it weird. You're just like, only if you're a car person are you permitted to read this story. So maybe I should stop here then. Keep going? All right, we'll keep going.
Charged over the neighbor's cinder block fence, crossed the driveway, and grappled with the Miata.
A cinder block fence? And grappled with the Miata. Again, wow. And grappled with it. You know what? Put that in dialogue, and you can get away with this. I don't know the difference between a Miata and a Mercury Coupe and a Taurus, but if you put it in dialogue where Jake's like, damn, that one's the size of a Ford Taurus, that one's the size of a Mercury Coupe, that one's the size of a Miata, then you've officially named the spiders like you're doing here. So instead of saying the Miata, well, you would still say the Miata. Okay, and then you could say, and here comes the Ford Taurus, or here comes the Taurus, here's the Mercury, and there's his dealer.
They wound their legs around each other and rolled back and forth, their fangs punching wildly into each other's faces. Cut.
Fangs punching. All right. I'm going to need a visual of this. How many people think that a spider can punch with their fangs? I see no hands, possibly because there is nobody here, and also because, there's no visual here, but I'm going to assume that everybody's hand is down. A spider can't punch with their fangs. It's a funny image, but even in comedy, at least come back to some sort of reality when it comes to wordsmithing. You could say they stabbed wildly, jabbed, threw their fangs at each other. That's fine. Mandibles crashed together. That's all good.
Kyle and Jake took advantage of the distraction. They fled the car and sprinted toward the house.
Little exposition-y here. A simple line of dialogue to be like, how's our chance? Let's get out of here. Where would we go? Let's get in the house. It's more protected. Okay.
Kyle's mom.
Anybody see South Park much?
Kyle's mom stepped in front of the kitchen door, peering out into the yard to investigate what all the ruckus was about.
Was it a ruckus or a fracas?
She was wearing an apron over her dress with the zebra print, her hair tied back into a ponytail. Jake had...
Relevant descriptions. Okay. The apron with the zebra print is fine because it's the counter to everything else happening around. So it's not that Jake wouldn't notice this sort of thing. It's more that he notices it in spite of everything that's happening. Like, because it's such a juxtaposition between what they just witnessed. Here's Happy Kyle's mom with a pretty little apron and a zebra print. That's fine. I wouldn't go so far as to say, oh, her hair was tied back into a ponytail. She had just, she had oven mitts on and had a fresh pie in the oven. We don't need all that. Just, a smile with a matching apron with a cute little zebra print, completely unaware of everything happening around her. More blissfully unaware.
The hots for her since 6th grade, ever since she'd rubbed ointment on after Ruby sung it.
Gewalt. Gewalt. I really hope I can show this on YouTube eventually. But, yeah, this has nothing to do with the story. Stifler's mom is not a relevant piece here. Okay. You could say, like, despite everything happening, Jake couldn't help blush seeing her. That's fine. But I don't need the exposition history lesson, of why he's into his best friend's mom, or what she, what laws she violated in the background. I don't even. Wow. Just wow. Yeah, I can't stay here. Let's keep going.
The teens nearly ran her down, barging into the house. Jake.
So either, they split-second noticed it, and then have a dialogue like, "Oh, what's up, boys?" and then push past her. Or don't have this pause moment where we're looking at her and, taking in her features and then barreling her over. It's one or the other there.
He guided her farther into the kitchen while Kyle locked the door behind him. What's going on, boys?
Yeah, that should have been earlier.
She looked half peeved, half alarmed. Kyle went up to his mother and laid his hands on her shoulders. Mom, there are giant spiders outside. Big as cars.
Oh, you're not going to break down the list? It's like, you should see Miata over here.
You smell like marijuana.
This we have no doubt.
Forget what I smell like. These ginormous tarantulas attacked us. One got Dad.
Who's speaking here? I'm assuming it's still Kyle, but you have 4 lines of dialogue in a row before we finally get Kyle's mom. Okay. At least give me one dialogue tag that shows the back and forth. Kyle went up to his mother. Mom, that's definitely Kyle. You smell like marijuana. I want a she said for that. It's a simple thing. I know it seems like it's not obvious, or that it is obvious, but sometimes just those little extras help because your brain is processing it in the background. We don't actually read the dialogue tags half the time, but your subconscious does. And so that's where it matters.
Don't be silly. Where's your father? Kyle's mom marched toward the door. Kyle grabbed her arm. Kyle, let me call your father. Lunch is almost ready.
Okay, I know she doesn't believe him that because he's likely high, but you just said, your father's been attacked. At the very least, she should be a little concerned about her husband. I mean, unless it's like, oh, don't be silly. Hopefully he got him good. The reaction isn't natural here. It's like, don't be silly. Where's your father? That's good. And so I grabbed her arm, and it's like, Kyle, let go of me. Respond to there. Not, let me call your father. Lunch is almost ready. She's disbelieving, not brain dead.
I don't think Mr. Graves made it, Mrs. Graves. Jake's tone was trying to be gentle, but his voice cracked and he sounded scared crapless. Mrs. Graves.
There's my editing again. Jake, find replace. Scared crapless. I like it.
Graves studied the boys' faces, waiting for the punchline to their gag. But she could see they were serious. Damn those drugs.
Damn those drugs.
This nonsense has to stop. You're making me anger.
You're making me anger. Grr. You sure she didn't growl?
Spider leg as long as their dining table broke through the kitchen window and poked about as if it were blindly searching.
So many size comparisons. Just say a giant spider leg crashed through the window and broke the dining room table. We don't. As long as their dining room table, we don't need the constant size comparisons. We get it. It's a big spider. As if it were blindly searching for its keys. You know what? Again, because it's a comedy, that's hilarious. This story is so stupid that it's making me laugh. So as far as comedies goes, this is good.
For its keys. Mrs. Graves screamed. Kyle grabbed a carving knife off the countertop and rammed it into the shell of the monster's leg. The leg snapped back, taking the knife with it. Mrs. Graves trembled, her mouth still agape.
Agape. I'll probably say this in every video, but if anybody knows how to or a better software than Microsoft Word for text to speech, let me know, because this software's job is leaving my mouth agape. I gotta say, just wow. Still, let me go back a second there. She goes, Mrs. Graves trembled, her mouth still agape. Okay. Still is one of those filter words that's like an extra that almost always can be eliminated. If you guys join my Discord server, if you sign up on my website, it'll give me a notice, and I'll invite you to the Discord server where you can submit critiques for review if you want, and join the community. I will also give you this dirty words and phrases chart cheat sheet that'll let you eliminate 50% of the garbage that fills up your manuscripts without even realizing it. And still is one of those. Still, then, just only things like that are almost always can just be thrown out, and it only improves the sentence.
Kyle thought she was making these noises, like squeaking, then realized it was Jake's wheezing.
Wow. Again, I'm laughing, so I can't fault it. It's doing the job.
Stress always triggered his asthma. Nobody did much of anything for a minute except stare out the window.
For a minute? That's a long time, a minute, to stare out a window.
They could only see sand, sky, and a wisp of a cloud.
Sand? I know California, even in the desert areas, not really sand. It's dry dirt. And sand, sky, and a wisp of a cloud. You don't see any other houses. You don't see the damage that was caused to the cars. Well, give us a little, or take away some of that white room problem and give us some details here. You have a moment to breathe. Like you said, you took a moment to stare. So take that moment and describe what you see. Describe what you're feeling, what you smell, what you hear, not just visual. All 5 senses. I want to know what's going on right now.
Something pounded against the wall, crawled up onto the roof, and tromped across it. All their eyes followed the thumping. It came to a halt somewhere over the den. "Let's go downstairs," Kyle said. "Don't think it's safe up here."
Let's? Like, oh, shall we adjourn downstairs, perhaps? I don't like the word choice there. Let's go downstairs. It's not wrong. This is a personal opinion here. I just think you could say, or we need to get to the basement, or we'll be safe in the basement, perhaps, or it's not safe here. It's not safe here. Let's get to the basement. No, that might be a little better.
Kyle led them down into the basement.
So why a scene break here? Because that's right next, exactly where it would be. I don't think you need a scene break there.
It was unfinished, the floor cracked in spots and wires winding through the beams crossing the ceiling.
I'm glad you're describing things, but we're not in a chill moment. We're in a high tense moment. So Jake is not staring at the cracks in the floor and the wires. He's rushing down the stairs, trying not to trip over an unfinished floor. You could say that. Okay. Pushed away wires hanging down from the ceiling, because that's relevant. If he's avoiding that, you're giving those details, those descriptions, and getting rid of the white room, which is good. But you're doing it in a way that matters to what's happening to Jake. If you're just going to describe the room, the scene is not set up for that. Here's a good example. If you're in a slow scene, you're out on a lake. Things are peaceful, things are calm, and you're taking in the view. I want lots of details. I want you to take a paintbrush and leave the white behind. Describe everything around you, and because the character's taking in the view. If someone is pointing a gun at you, you do not care about the target behind him. You don't care about the Cinnabon across the street. You don't care about the potholes in the street. None of that matters in the moment. What you would notice, perhaps, is, a chip in the barrel as it's, pointing straight at your head. You might notice that because you're staring at it. So relevancy is key here. I like that you try to get rid of the white room with the descriptions. Just put it in the context, trying to avoid tripping over the unfinished parts in a floor that's being redone, pushing wires away, hanging down from the ceiling. That will work.
There was a bathroom with a toilet and sink.
I don't know many bathrooms that don't have toilets and sinks. I know some that don't have a shower, but I don't think you can call it a bathroom if it doesn't at least have a toilet. And this is one of those dirty words you try to reduce as many was's as possible. Fuzzy wuzzy wasn't there. Okay, get rid of get rid of the fuzzy wuzzies. And you can there's a few ways you can get rid of it. In most cases, you could rearrange the sentence, or you can rephrase it, or you can change how you say the sentence. Not different from rephrasing, meaning like you say something different altogether. In this case, why do we care about a bathroom? Now, if he's looking for a way to stay alive for the next few days until this all blows over, have us see that thought process going, we may be down here for days. And Jake scans the room. Okay, we have behind, maybe there's a bar in the basement, like one of those little makeshift bars that people have. And he goes, okay, there's some there's some food and snacks and drinks behind the bar. So that should keep us okay. There's a bathroom with a sink, so we can at least have water, and you could be funny too. A place to poop. That's important. Okay, in that context, those details matter. Okay, but that's also Jake spotting it, not the narrator telling us what Jake sees or telling us what's there and not even acknowledging what Jake sees. That's the difference.
Across the room, next to the furnace, was where Mr. Graves stowed most of his tools on a workbench he seldom used. And would never use again. Kyle.
And would never use again. Okay, that's poetic, which is not bad. It's not purple prose in this case. I think if you put it on its own line and made it a thought bubble, that would be better. Okay. Across the room, Jake spotted a furnace with Mr. Graves' tools on a workbench next to it that he seldom used. New paragraph. And would never use again, comma, Jake realized. See, that's making a thought bubble.
Kyle's mother started to cry, which really tore Kyle up inside.
Hang on. How would we know what Kyle's thinking? You set this up from Jake's perspective. Oh. I realize I made a mistake before. The new scene. Okay. In the previous scene, we were in Jake's point of view. The new scene, Kyle led them down to the basement. So now we are in Kyle's point of view. That's why the scene transitions there, which is good. If you are going to have two main characters, you cannot know the thoughts of both characters at the same time, unless you're doing third-party omniscient, which is actually a trap. Don't use third-party omniscient. There's a time and a place for it, and there is a way to do it well. Most newbie writers just don't do it well. The trick is to have the narrator be a character, not in the story, but like your grandfather reading the story. They have a voice, they have a personality. The way they talk is different from everybody else. That's third-person omniscient. What the writer's doing here is third-party limited point of view, where in any individual scene, you can only know the thoughts of one character. And so this was my mistake, why he had a scene transition. The first scene was Jake's point of view. Now we're in Kyle's point of view. This is not a critique of him. This is a good catch. This was my mistake, and now it makes sense.
He loved his dad, but never told him so or hugged him or anything sappy like that.
This is exposition. I want thought bubbles here. Okay. I don't need a history lesson of the relationship Kyle and his dad had. I need that visceral, like, what was his first thoughts? You know, I never told him I loved him, Kyle realized, as a thought bubble. Okay. Thought bubbles are useful. You don't want to overuse them, but a lot of times most exposition can be done in either dialogue or a thought bubble.
They weren't that kind of family. But they were a family, and Kyle knew he'd miss the bastard.
You ever see Futurama? I'll miss your meatbag.
I'll miss your meatbag. Me too, meatbag.
Jake, knelt in a corner rocking himself, wasn't any help keeping their heads on straight. Kyle fought his own urge to go apex rap and tried to work out a plan.
Yeah, that was word again. That was my swear substitution again. Ape crap.
I say we stay down here until they go away. What if they don't go away?
Who's speaking? I say we stay down here until they go away. Based on the previous paragraph, I'm assuming that's Kyle. I know you started that paragraph saying Jake knelt in the corner. Although I would say, even though that paragraph started with Jake, okay, you said Kyle fought down his own urge. That's how you ended the paragraph. So this really wasn't a paragraph about Jake. This was a paragraph about Kyle. So the dialogue, I would assume, is Kyle's dialogue. That's why dialogue tags are important. I say we stay down here until they go away. Kyle said, Jake said, whoever it is. What if they don't go away? Don't know who's talking again. What then? Jake was now freaking out to the max. So that tells me that this dialogue was actually Jake. And the previous one was Kyle. So actually, it does work, but I had to analyze it. I was confused. Dialogue tags, they're useful. Use them.
What then? Jake was now freaking out to the max. But Kyle had to admit it was a question that was worth considering. Then they have to die sometime soon. What if they have babies, man? Thousands of giant freaking spider babies. Kyle didn't have a response to this.
Yeah, I wouldn't either. I was like, sit here and wait for death?
A female tarantula did have hundreds of offspring, though the mortality rate was mighty high. At least it was when they were normal-sized. I think we should stay down here a while, until the military comes. Mrs. Graves' voice was calm for a woman whose husband and home had been attacked by tarantulas, as
Tarantulas. Okay, you should have started calling them tarantulas like 4 pages ago, because we said they weren't a tarantula. Okay, you didn't describe it to us as a giant tarantula. You just described it as a giant spider. And you said they were not tarantulas specifically. So don't say they weren't tarantulas and then call them tarantulas and then call them titantulas. Okay, weren't your average tarantula. They were more like titantulas. And then thereafter, refer to them as titantulas, and that's fine. This is a little late in the game to start calling them titantulas. And as far as the dialogue goes here, it's a little confusing again because we had this conversation about dialogue tags. The dialogue tag should have came after the first clause or before the sentence. There's a comma there. I think we should stay down here a while, comma, close quote, Mrs. Graves said, period. Open quote, at least until the military comes. Her voice was calm for a woman whose husband and home had just been attacked by giant titantulas. Okay. That would flow better.
Jake called them.
We don't need to know them as Jake called them. You're telling us that he called them that, but when did he call them that? We were with you the whole time, and you never had that line of dialogue.
Her maternal instincts must have kicked in. Yeah. The army's gotta come soon to snuff some spider ass. Jake grinned, more delighted than Kyle had ever seen him. He loved the army, and he was only a couple of years from being eligible to enlist.
So this is the first time we're getting a feel for their age. Only a couple of years, so they were high schoolers, but not even, like you can enlist, 17? So that means that puts them now at 15 years old. It wasn't relevant to state their ages in the beginning, but it would have been better to give contextual clues early on that let us know that they were high schoolers, not college people. Okay, I assume they were like between 18 and 25. That's what I assumed. Because they were in a car, one of them was driving, which don't you have to be 16 to drive in most states, at least for a junior license? Or were they just using the car as a place to get high? That matters.
But we're going to need to bring some food down here, Mrs. Graves said. And a radio. Which means we have to go upstairs.
So she was a complete dimwit before. Oh, your boys are just kidding. Honey, time for lunch. Where's Dad? And now she's just like, oh, we need radio, we need food, we need to prepare. I mean, you mentioned maternal instincts kicking in, but this is like she got a brain from somebody else and stuck it in there. Yeah, either show this transition, not tell us. You know, I'll go to the previous page where he said her maternal instincts must have kicked in. Okay, that's just telling us something that you didn't show the progression. Okay. You should contrast it with how she was talking before, after you fix that, because she should not be brain dead to begin with, but she can't go from brain dead to genius. Okay. She should go to, you know, mildly concerned and unsure to pulling her stuff together and being like, okay, we need to do the things. What do we need to do? List them out. Okay. Go back where we were.
Kyle and Jake didn't say anything for a moment. Going back upstairs was the last thing they wanted to do.
Again, Kyle doesn't know what Jake wants to do. This is the last thing that Kyle wanted to do, and Jake didn't seem any more eager. That's fine. Now, I hate seem to, you know, I don't like that. That's a filter word. But again, it's Kyle's point of view and then his opinion of what Jake is thinking or what he's reading from the body language or dialogue. You want to go up there? Because I don't. And Jake shakes his head. Now you have confirmation.
But sure as hell Kyle wasn't going to let his mom do it.
Did she say that she was going to do it? I mean, she said, we have to go upstairs, which is kind of odd. Why would she say we? I would think she would say someone. You wouldn't want to send everybody upstairs all at once. It's like, let's all get eaten together. It's like, no, one person brave it, and if they're lucky, you know, the rest of us will live.
I'll go. Kyle dashed for the stairs.
And then if that mother duckling thing is kicking in, she goes, the hell you are, boys. You know, a mother's job is to keep her children safe. Because remember, they're underage. They're kids, you said. So mother duckling is going to be like, it's my role. I got to do this. And now you could argue that and be like, you know, spring chicken, I'm much faster. I need to do this.
Be right back. Be careful, Kyle, his mother shouted. Yeah. Jake added.
I feel like she should be giving Jake a dirty look like, my son's going up there. Why aren't you? All right, new scene. So I'm going to assume POV change again, maybe.
The trip above ground went without incident.
The trip above... You were in the basement, weren't you? What above ground? A trip above ground.
Kyle dug a duffel bag out of the closet in the hall and filled it with canned goods and sodas. He took the
canned goods and sodas from where? Pantry? From the kitchen?
The radio from his parents' bedroom. He also packed flashlights, batteries, band-aids, and blankets.
This is just telling us what he did, summarizing it. That's exposition again. We don't. Instead, okay, Kyle dug a duffel bag out of the front the closet in the front hall and got to work. In the kitchen, he went to the pantry and grabbed as many canned goods out of it, and also some sodas and juice, and threw it in the bag. Then he went into the beneath the cupboard. He was able to find flashlights, batteries, band-aids, and well, I don't know if he would find blankets in there, but maybe he raced to the bedroom and grabbed a blanket. But each of these things should happen in turn, and I want not just stage directions. He went here, he got this. He went here, he got this. But also his thought process, what he's hearing, what he's looking for, how his nerves are. Immerse us here. This is the tense moment. Even in a comedy, okay, it's still gotta immerse us in the story. And right now it's not all that funny. The joke's kind of stopped here. Now it's a little more serious. So I'm going to be more critical because you're not making it stupid. You're making it serious now.
He mustered up enough courage to peek out the front door and spotted a couple of spiders humping on Mr. Lanker's flatbed truck.
Well, I just said the comedy was gone, and, well, it's back. I was going to say it's pretty dumb, considering the intensity of this, to sneak a peek. But at the same time, that is something a character totally would do. And now you brought the comedy back. Much appreciated. After all, this is supposed to be a funny story from the looks of it.
He then tried both phones.
Both phones. We didn't identify that there were two phones specifically and only. Okay. What phones where? What room is he in? We have white room problems again because you summarized everything. Is he in the kitchen? Is he in the bedroom grabbing the blankets? Is he in the bathroom getting the Band-Aids? What window in which room? And what did he look out of? And then which phones did he try? He tried the phone in the kitchen, dead. Okay, he tried another phone, in the den, also dead.
Dead. He switched on the TV in the den. All the stations were static, except the one that played classical over photos of rivers, mountains, and beaches.
Is it wise to have something that's, making a lot of noise turned on right now? That seems like a terrible idea. And you can't usually mute it until it loads at this point. It's not like one of those old TVs where you could turn it just barely on and have the volume not on yet. If you turn the TV on, you're going to get whatever volume what it was previously set at, and you're going to get at least a word or two in before the mute button works. So I wouldn't recommend that unless it's going to trigger an event. Because if it's going to trigger, where the spiders do hear it, then that's just the character being an idiot, and there's going to be consequences. But if there's no consequences, that doesn't work for me.
Kyle lugged the supplies back down into the basement. This should hold us over a while. But if I need to go back up, it's no big deal.
Again, white room. He went back down into the basement. What does he see? Does he see his mother tending to Jake? Are they just standing there? They're twiddling their thumbs. What does he come down to?
The following week passed slowly.
Now that's a scene break right there. The following week passed slowly. Now, this is a new time frame now.
Each of them had gone upstairs a few times for clothes, toilet paper, pillows, the George Foreman grill, and anything else they needed, but for the most part they remained in the basement.
I don't think we need the details of the toilet paper and everything. I think you could just say, we stayed in the basement for over a week. A few of us went upstairs occasionally for supplies that we needed, but for the most part remained in the basement and avoided making loud noises that might attract any nearby spiders or titantulas.
When they did venture upstairs, they would sometimes see the titantulas outside the windows, creeping around like they owned the town and knew it.
There's that humor again. I like keep it coming. Strutting would work very well there. Not creeping around, strutting around like they own the town and knew it. Yeah.
The three of them spent some time speculating where the monsters came from. Kyle thought,
Why are you telling us this? Why isn't this a scene? You know? Where do you think they came from? I don't know, man. I'm not high enough yet. Pass it over.
mutated from toxic waste was the most logical.
Mm-hmm. And soon enough, we're hoping some turtles show up along with their rat master. Mm-hmm.
His mother, a Baptist, thought it was punishment from God for mankind's wickedness.
She didn't come across as the church lady type. Like she came across as someone who might attend church, but not a. He said his mother a Baptist. See, now you're calling out. I'm gonna have to put a foot down here. Be careful. Be very, very careful. By identifying a specific faith and a specific sect, you are attacking that specific religion and sect, even in jest. You're going to get hate mail. Don't do that. It's enough to just say, his mother, a religious woman, believed this was punishment. And make that dialogue again. Don't, we should be praying, that sort of thing. But don't call out a specific faith like that. Bad move.
And Jake thought they were aliens here to conquer our planet. Jake was sometimes.
Oh, jeez. Yeah, different times. People, words are different. Words have different meaning. There's that cancel culture versus woke culture versus whatever else. I'm not going to get political here. I'm going to avoid political, other than to say you want to choose your words carefully, and you're going to be directing it at the target audience. Who is your target audience? Are you specifically targeting a political group? Are you specifically targeting a general audience? Are you targeting kids? Are you targeting men, women? Okay. Using that word can trigger people, and it can rip people's immersion of the story and have them pause and have this discussion that we're having now. Okay. Some people are too sensitive. Some people are not sensitive enough. Okay. And that's going to, I know I overuse okay. Sorry. But be careful. It's your choice if you want to use certain words. But it's going to narrow your audience. It's going to divide them. So it's better to avoid simple stupid where you can than to say, well, this is how I am, so this is how I'm going to be, and only people who are like me are intended for these stories. Because if you do that, your audience is going to be one, yourself. So just be careful. Choose your words carefully. You don't have to always do the right word. You don't always have to go, avoid saying certain words, but understand when you make certain choices, how it's going to affect your audience.
The army never showed. They never even heard any helicopters or jets flying by. It was as if the world forgot them. That, or the world was equally as screwed as Needles.
So the title was Fangs and Needles, and we had the town named Needles. I don't think because we started in medias res, meaning right in the middle of everything, the town was name dropped on the first page, and then nothing ever since. And now we're getting Needles again. If that's a relevant theme, okay, I want the town to be more referenced more often. I want them to turn on a radio and say even if it's just static, and then for 1 second you hear something about needles, and then it turns off again. It's like, well, somebody's talking about the town, so that matters. Maybe this isn't happening all over the planet. Maybe it's just in this town. Okay, but don't name drop it on page 1 and then name drop it again 15 pages later and think that's supposed to matter because it's the title.
Their only sighting of any authorities had been Deputy Chandler down the block. 2 tarantulas the size of Ford Explorers had...
There we go with the cars again. I give up. Ford Explorer, isn't that an SUV? Can't you say SUV? Can you just give us SUV?
Fought over his body, ripping it in half and each devouring their portion.
How are you identifying that was specifically Deputy Chandler if the body was ripped in half, being ripped in half and being devoured? Like, what features identified this as Deputy Chandler specifically? Maybe you could just say one of the sheriff's deputies. That's you know. See the uniform. That makes sense.
Other than that, they saw no one, heard nothing.
Saw no one, and now when you say heard nothing, that doesn't work because you're hearing the spiders, you're hearing the guy being ripped apart. You're hearing things happening all around you. It's not silence. Saw no other people. And heard no commotion other than the spiders' occasional walk-bys. That would make more sense.
Kyle yearned for the roar of the BNSF freight line, which his father had rode for a living before heat stroke killed him, chugging by his house like it used to do every night, but he knew that was probably too much to hope for. Fact was hope was becoming a burden they couldn't bear.
Fact was hope was... What? Fact was hope was becoming... The fact was, comma, hope was becoming a burden they couldn't bear. Yeah, fix that, brain.
Though they slept a lot, they were always weary, worn down to the bone. Being stuck inside day after day was draining them.
Were. Get rid of those fuzzy wuzzies. No fuzzy wuzzies. Get rid of your fuzzy wuzzies. You're allowed 2 per story, per 2,000 words. You're allowed maybe 3. I'll let you have 3 fuzzy wuzzies. In 1 fuzzy wuzzy for every 1,000 words. There we go.
They had to do something soon or they'd lose it completely. On day 7 the spiders were busy doing something of their own.
On day 7, comma, doing something of their own. That's specific, as in not specific at all. Can you give us a little more detail? Who's seeing this? What's happening?
Bursts of a noise like whooshing air circled the house for near an hour, then ceased.
Bursts of a noise like whooshing air, again with the likes. Bursts of a noise like whooshing air circled the house for nearly an hour before ceasing. Okay. But how did they know that those noises were the spiders? Whose POV are we in? This is just exposition of what happened on day 7, telling us without experiencing it.
The house became quieter than ever. And they lost their electricity.
This all happened at the same moment. You had whoosh-like noises, it ceased, and then the electricity cut out. You didn't specify it like that. You just kind of listed them out like that. You didn't say that this all happened together. So that's the problem with exposition. It's a summary of the story. You need to, for immersion's sake, on day 7, Kyle took a trip upstairs and noticed the spiders were doing something odd out the window, something he hadn't seen before. He started coming towards the house, so Kyle or Jake or whoever rushed into the basement. And then a whoosh-like noise wrapped the house. They couldn't figure out what was happening, but they stayed quiet as a mouse. Nearly an hour passed until it finally stopped, and the silence rose from it. And just as they thought things were calming down, the electricity went out. That's how you set the stage from one piece to the next to the next. That's the scene occurring, not just telling us, summarizing what happened.
Kyle went up to check things out. First thing he noticed was that all the windows were covered in white, backlit by the morning sun.
Now there's your purple prose. All the windows were covered in a lovely shade of white, backlit by the glint of the morning sun through the window. It was like a silk curtain draped gently over the house. How thrilling. Why so poetic all of a sudden?
It was like a silk curtain had been draped over the house. Which wasn't far off.
See, okay, the silk thing, I get it now, the spider web. Got it.
Kyle returned to the basement, deflated.
Deflated? Why is he deflated? He's disappointed? Oh, man. They made a web. Boo. I'm going to sleep now. I feel defeated. Boo.
We're webbed in. What? Jake was letting Kyle's mom give him a haircut by candlelight. The spiders spun.
Stifler's mom is getting frisky. You should say he has a bee sting.
On a web over the whole house. His mom stopped cutting. You mean they trapped us in here? Yeah. I guess so. Why would they do that? Jake stammered. To save us, Kyle's mom answered coolly. For later.
Okay, so here you got the dialogue tag right after the first clause, to save us. Okay, but you shouldn't have put a period there. Actually, that doesn't work at all. Never mind. To save us for later, comma. Kyle's mom answered coolly. Okay, I think you were trying to put a dramatic pause, but it didn't work. If you were going to do a dramatic pause, then put the dialogue tag first. Kyle's mom's expression grew grim. To save us, ... for later. Now you have your dramatic pause. Okay.
That's screwed up.
Hey, you got to preserve your food. Winter's coming.
Watch your mouth, Jake.
Of all the swear words, this entire... Oh, never mind. That was me switching words around again. That's messed up. That's screwed up. Yeah. We get it. We get it. But they were swearing like this entire time, and this is the first time that you know she gets angry.
Sorry, Mrs. Graves. But it is. Kyle agreed. Well, I don't want to wait around to become dinner for some damn mutated bugs. Aliens, Jake corrected. Whatever. We can't just sit here. What do you suggest, Kyle? Kyle chewed his lip. We make a break for it.
So you have the dialogue tags are better here. Sometimes putting the dialogue tag inside dialogue like that helps. What do you suggest, Kyle? But in this case, you don't need it because the next line says Kyle chewed his lip. And also in speech, if you've ever noticed, you very rarely ever say the person's name who you're talking to, unless you're trying to get their attention first. Like, it's like, Jenny's over and, 20 feet away. Hey, Jenny, come here. You could say the name. But, unless you are talking to multiple people and you want to specifically ask one person, then you can say the name. But in this case, Jake said something. Kyle. Actually, I don't know who, whatever, we can't. we can't just sit here is, I'm assuming that's Kyle. Okay, so what do you suggest, Kyle? I'm assuming that's Jake. Let me read this. Aliens, Jake corrected. Whatever, we can't just sit here. Then what do you suggest? In this case, the then helps clarify that that's Jake continuing to speak. Kyle chewed his lip. We make a break for it.
They discovered that cutting through the webbing was near impossible. The core was strong as steel, and the outer threads kept bunching up around the saw blade before you could even make a nick in them. Then Jake put an acetylene torch to it and it burned away like a mesh of fuses, dissolving into ash onto the ground.
So whose POV are we in here now? You're still summarizing again. This is something a lot of newbie writers do as well. Every time they start a new scene, they feel like they need to give this introduction to the scene. Don't do that. This is not Shakespeare. We don't have a little guy who comes in front of the curtain while the actors change in the back, and he describes the scene for you before it gets started. Okay, we don't want that. Start in the scene. Don't explain the scene first. Okay.
He melted a hole outside the front door large enough for them to fit through. They also made a dozen Molotov cocktails from kerosene and Heineken bottles, which Kyle's mother had rinsed out first. She was the one who thought of it, which surprised Kyle. His mom was anti-violence and pro-life.
So, before we get into that, this entire page was dedicated to exposition, to setting up the scene and the history that led you there. Don't start there. Start where you're using this stuff and describe how you got that stuff as you go through the motions. It's like, hand me the Molotov cocktail. Okay. The several bottles of liquor that Jake stuffed handkerchiefs down or tissues down. He handed it to him. Okay. That will work. But don't give us this whole long setup.
Toward all of God's creatures. Guess she drew the line at spiders that ate people.
So, dabbling into that political issue again, where you are attacking a woman's faith, in a sense, even if you agree with her, okay, even if this is how you feel as well, you're calling attention to it as if this matters. And I get that you're trying to say that, you know, she believes all God's creatures are sacred, but she drew the line at spiders that ate people. That's fine. But I don't think we need to discuss her political opinions for that reference to matter. And we're also dipping low on the comedy here again. So I haven't laughed in a while. Come on, make me laugh.
Jake came up with the idea to wear layers of jackets, sweatshirts, and jeans as a form of armor, but Mrs. Graves thought it would slow them down if they needed to run. Not to mention she was pretty sure fangs as sharp as scythes could pierce leather and denim.
I would agree. Yeah. That's like when you're wearing a motorcycle, you want to wear leather, not jeans. So you're saying okay, sweatshirts and jackets, that's no good, but the leather actually would help. It would at least reduce the amount that it would pierce. It probably still could pierce it, but if you had multiple layers of leather, that actually would work. But most jackets aren't leather these days. So that actually would work if you were saying, like, grab dad's old jackets. Okay.
So Jake and Kyle wore their t-shirts and a pair of jeans each.
I don't think we need to care about that afterwards.
Kyle's mom changed into a Henley shirt and her khaki pants. Jake liked the way Mrs. Graves but looked in them.
You give old Stifler's mom. Like I said, I'm gonna leave it alone because of the comedy. I guess I'm glad you're trying to put the comedy back a little bit, but wow. All right, we got a half hour left, so let's see if we can finish this.
Mrs. Graves said they should have a destination in mind. Kyle proposed they head into town where there might be other people. Maybe the army had set up a security perimeter there.
That should be a line of dialogue. Maybe the army has set up a security perimeter over there, over in town. We should go there first.
Kyle's mom thought this was smart.
Dialogue again.
They preferred to drive there, but the Graves' only car was in the shop and Jake's was a junker that stalled every few feet. They'd have to hoof it.
How inconvenient.
It was over a mile into town following West Broadway. And being the desert, there weren't any clusters of trees to hide amongst. They would be easy to spot. But staying put was out of the question. Food was getting low, and they were out of toilet paper. So off they went.
I feel like this is a reference to COVID and the toilet papers. It's still a little exposition-y for my taste. If you look at the screen right now, there's no dialogue on the entire screen. Nowhere. None of it. Make it a scene, not summarizing a series of events. I can't stress that enough.
The sun was high in the sky and the temperature was just above 100 degrees. Cool for a summer afternoon in Needles, but it still made their hike grueling. Almost every house, car, and shed were encased in web. Kyle pointed out a birdhouse, mounted on top of a pole, had been wrapped up too. Jake held the acetylene torch at the ready, barely lit. Kyle and his mother gripped Molotov cocktails in each of their hands. They walked in silence for a while, breathing shallowly, vigilant as hawks. The air was hot as an oven. The pavement shimmered like it was coming to a boil. Sweat soaked their clothes, poured in salty rivulets off their faces. They had been walking close together for 15 minutes before Jake braved to speak.
Oh boy, we're gonna get some dialogue finally. How nice. It's a story again. Eesh. All of that description was just summarizing and describing things around them. It's okay to describe what you see around you. That's good. I don't care about a birdhouse mounted on top of a pole. Okay. The webbing is cool. Talking about how everything is covered in webbing and how they're preparing themselves. This is good. Describing the weather is good because that's a sensation, hot. But don't just say the air was hot as an oven. Avoid those similes, like I said. Metaphors are better. Okay? Or just be literal. The hot air stuck to my neck, and I pulled my shirt to let the excess heat escape. You know? Use that immersion to make us feel what the character is feeling, not just saying that the air was hot. Now the fuzzy wuzzy. Okay.
Where are they all? He was talking about the spiders.
How do we know? And who is speaking? Jake braved to speak, that's right. Where are they all? He was whose POV are we in right now? Are we in Kyle's POV or are we in Jake's? He didn't tell us. So for the comment, he was talking about the spiders. That's the narrator. That's that third person omniscient problem. Okay? You're giving us thoughts from a third party's perspective. Don't do that.
They hadn't seen any since they'd escaped the house. Kyle and his mother didn't answer. They didn't have one. They reached town within a half hour. They were greeted by an awesome sight, one that made their guts clench.
Oh, a traditional use of the word awesome made their guts clenched. Considering they're stoners, I'd recommend avoiding using the traditional definition for awesome, because that sounds like, dude, this is awesome. That's why my gut's clenching right now, because it's terribly awesome. Because you set up that stoner language to begin with, the 90s California stoner language, you can't use awesome that way. It's awesome like a hot dog, not awesome like an incredible sight.
Every building and every vehicle, every signpost and traffic signal, bench and trash bin were shrouded in one seemingly interconnected web, resembling a surreal, nightmarish quilt knitted by a mad granny.
The way I see you're trying to word that long sentence in a way that's more poetic. If you want to do that, you could say, every building and every vehicle, comma, every signpost and every traffic signal, comma, every bench and every trash bin was shrouded in seemingly interconnected webs. Okay. It's either that or just say every building, vehicle, signpost, traffic signal, bench, and everything else between here across the town was shrouded. But if you want to be poetic, you need that repetition of the every constantly for that to make sense.
Here and there were some cocoon bundles shaped like human bodies. This is screwed up, Jake muttered. Kyle's mother didn't tell him to mind his language.
Yeah, screwed. Very, very bad word. Don't use that, kids.
Probably because it was screwed up.
Okay, now not only did you include the was's, you accentuated the was with an underline. Make it italics. But also, no Fuzzy Wuzzy. Fuzzy Wuzzy wasn't a bear. Fuzzy Wuzzy didn't have hair. Fuzzy Wuzzy needs to drop his wuzzies. You get it? You gazi?
What do we do now? Kyle asked feebly. Maybe, Mrs. Graves said, we should check some of the stores.
Okay. When I was talking earlier about where those dialogue tags should be, and I said after the first clause, but not necessarily after the first word, this is an example of that. Maybe we should check some of the stores, Mrs. Graves said. Even though there is technically a comma there, that's still one clause, that whole thing. What the writer is trying to do here is offer another dramatic pause. You don't need everything doesn't have to be a dramatic pause. This is we're not writing Bill Shatner over here. Maybe we should check some of the stores and see if anyone is inside. I don't think Mrs. Graves acts like that.
See if anyone's inside. Anyone alive, you mean?
Now, that would be good for italics again. Anyone alive, you mean?
Mrs. Graves nodded, then prodded them onward.
Maybe she should frown first. Mrs. Graves frowned, then nodded. But continued onward.
Jake sliced an opening in a web with the torch, exposing the automatic entrance doors of Bosch's grocery.
How do you slice with a torch? She could take the torch, or Jake could take the torch and wave it over the webs, and it melts away, or burns away. Not really slice, though.
They were locked, so Kyle smashed the glass with a tire iron he picked up from the street.
I guess they weren't worried about the sounds anymore.
They slipped inside.
You could just say, and slipped inside, that's fine.
It was dark and smelled faintly of BO and meat. Nothing stirred. Mrs. Graves called out. Hello? Anybody here? Her voice echoed in the murky space. Nobody responded.
That could be on the same paragraph.
Should have brought flashlights, Kyle commented. Can't see crap in here. I can fix that. Jake had one of the Molotov cocktails that Kyle had handed to him when he'd busted through the entrance doors.
Oy, that passive voice again. Had one of those Molotov cocktails. Had is like was. No hads either. Get rid of as many. The trick is, if something occurred before the scene, use had. And if it is occurring during the scene, don't use had. In this case, it technically happened before the scene. So you would want to use had. But there's no reason that we need this supposition to say, oh yeah, that was what the Molotov from when he handed it back in the thing when he was doing the thing over here.
He lit the dish rag wick with the acetylene torch and raised it up. It cast a flickering glow over a crated display of fruits and vegetables. Mrs. Graves gasped, eyes bulging at Jake. "What the hell are you doing?" Kyle barked.
Barked again. You don't need that. What the hell are you doing? Kyle asked. That's all. Asked is an okay word. It's allowed.
Light, Jake said innocently. Bomb.
How about give me a light?
Kyle corrected him.
Okay. I could say it's a light. And then he could respond, it's a bomb.
Oh, yeah. Throw it. Jake hurled the bottle across the room. It exploded midair, launching plumes of flame over the shelves.
It wouldn't explode like that. It would hit whatever it's doing, and then the shrapnel would spread, and the flames would spread with the alcohol. But it's not a bomb like boom kind of a thing. That's not how Molotovs work. He could hold that thing in his hand all day, and it would just stay on fire. He actually could use it like a light like that. I just wouldn't recommend it. Remember, the alcohol itself is not what's burning. It's the alcohol vapors that's burning. So essentially, it would be like a candle in a wick, because the top would be aflame, and the alcohol underneath would still be intact, and it would just burn down. So that doesn't actually work in this case. But they could be dumb. They are stoners, after all. Okay. Maybe Kyle, maybe Jake is like, there's nothing wrong with it. It's a light. He goes, it's a bomb. And he goes, no, it's not. And then maybe Kyle, in a rush not to hear not to hear what he's saying, it's like, it's a bomb, and grabs it and throws it. That would be okay.
The bread and cereal aisle caught fire. So did the barbecue accessories. The place filled with thick roiling smoke. Are you stupid? Jake stared at him, fumbling for an excuse. Let's get out of here, boys.
Boys? I'm assuming that's Mrs. Graves talking, but you didn't say that. Maybe he thinks, maybe it's Jake talking, and Mrs. Graves is one of the boys now.
They bolted from the store. Jake coughed
I don't think you needed a scene transition unless we're doing a POV change.
like he'd swigged a lungful of wild turkey down the wrong pipe.
Like again. We don't need these similes. Okay. When you're saying coughed like he swigged a lungful of wild turkey, you're just saying, he gagged and coughed. Just use the right words. We don't need the wild turkey bit.
Kyle guessed he was
Unless Wild Turkey is sponsoring you. In that case, by all means.
faking it to get sympathy instead of getting crap for being such a dumbass.
Are they stoned right now? Because I wouldn't think that would apply here.
You're such a dumbass, Jake. Jake kept forcing coughs. Never mind. What's done is done. Though I would have liked to have gotten some food and things. Mrs. Graves glared at Jake.
Here, the dialogue tag is all the way at the end of the paragraph, 3 sentences down. No, never mind, Mrs. Graves said, period. She glared at Jake. What's done is done, though I would have liked to... Or never mind, Mrs. Graves said. What's done is done, though I would have liked to have gotten some food and things. She glared at Jake.
He stopped coughing and looked down, feeling like a dumbass. By now they could see the fire engulfed most of the inside of the market. Smoke spilled out the front. It reminded Kyle of a rock concert he once went to.
This story kind of reminds me of, what was that movie now? With Simon Pegg and the zombies, Shaun of the Dead. This movie kind of reminds me of Shaun of the Dead a little bit with the idiots bumbling around and doing the stupid.
Purple Rain. No. Sign of the Times. Definitely not. The Batman soundtrack. Throw it. Okay. Oh, Dire Straits. Throw it. Oh!
What now? Kyle sounded too dispirited to really care. They visited.
Dispirited. You're using stoner language in one part, and then you're using a vocab word like dispirited here. Let me point out this is another newbie writer trap where you're trying to show the audience that you're intelligent, so you're trying to use big boy words. You don't need to do that. Now, sometimes a good vocab word brings clarity and makes it actually better to use. However, if you try to put in more complex words when they're not otherwise needed, it just makes you sound pretentious and makes you think that your audience is too dumb to read your story. So there's a balance to be had here. And I think with Kyle and Jake, the 90s California stoners, dispirited is not the right word choice.
The pharmacy and gun store across the street, getting.
It's a pharmacy and gun store, or they visited the pharmacy and the gun store?
A first aid kit and snacks from the former, and swapping the rest of their Molotovs for 3 rifles and a case of ammo from the latter. The teens were decent shots, having practiced hunting quail together since they were in middle school.
If they were hunting quail, they were likely using birdshot, not rifles. Different kind of shooting. Another newbie writer trap. Know what you're talking about. At least do some Googling, some basic research, so that you understand when you're talking about Molotov cocktails, what is a Molotov cocktail? Even if you think you know, Google it. Okay? You're hunting quail. How do you hunt quail? Birdshot, shotgun. So maybe they grabbed some shotguns instead of rifles. Okay? Or they hunted deer, and then you'd say, grab the rifle. Okay, maybe they grabbed a handgun too, gave that to Mrs. Graves, her little, 22 pea shooter handgun. It's just in case,
Kyle showed his mom, never one for hunting, how to load, aim and shoot. By the time they were finished, 5 stores were ablaze: the market, video store, mail center, the Red Dog Bar, and an antique shop owned by a Korean woman who, for some reason, cussed in Italian.
I didn't get all the curses out, sorry. Boy, this is starting to get past the red line on what's considered safe here. What does this matter to the story? What does a shop owner who's matter what nationality she is, what language she speaks, how she acts? I understand it gives a little bit of world building. The Red Dog Bar. Maybe you could have said something about the shop, the owner of that store, and then you're building on that. But for some reason, you zeroed in on this antique shop owned specifically by, and then you're going into these weird things. I don't think you need to do that. It pulls away from your story. It doesn't really give you the world building you think it does. And again, you're dividing your readers. There are some who would be like, oh, he's using authentic, real language. And there are others who are going to be like, you are looking bigoted, prejudiced, and even if that wasn't your intent, that's how they're going to perceive you, and they're going to get disgusted with the story, and they're going to walk away. It's simple enough to just change small things like that to avoid the problem. There's something called a sensitivity reader. When you're getting critiques, if you're touching on certain subjects that might otherwise be offensive to different kinds of people, it's good to get a sensitivity reader to just give you a once-over and say, maybe don't do this, maybe don't do that. A good example is I'm writing a story where there's a female-female romance, and there's pitfalls with that. I myself am not a woman, last I checked. So that perspective on things is not something I have. That kind of relationship is not something that I know. So I'm going to make sure that when those scenes are done, I'm going to get somebody who is intimately familiar with that topic to read it and give me suggestions how to make it work correctly. So your jokes are pretty funny so far, but sometimes they're getting a little old-fashioned and they're getting rough and abrasive in a way that worked in 1970, doesn't work so much in the modern era.
They saw nobody the entire time they were there. No giant spiders either. They decided to explore the other side of town.
Who decided what? Make that a dialogue, please.
The outskirts of northern Needles, beyond the few cheap, now web-adorned trucker motels, were primarily rugged sun-baked terrain. Kyle thought if they could locate a car with the keys left in it, they could scrape it clean and drive it to Laughlin. Maybe there were folks still playing the slots in the casinos there. Hey! What's that? Jake gestured toward the desert.
Put that on the previous paragraph.
In the distance they could make out a dark spot, a dusky red gash against pale sand and rock. Dunno, Kyle said. Should we go see? Mrs. Graves wasn't very encouraging about it. Kyle shook his head. Let's go to Laughlin. Then he spotted the giant tarantula. It was lying belly up by some purple-flowered brush, its legs curled inward in mock prayer. It was about the size of a Toyota Camry.
And now we got a Camry. Oh, boy. Yeah, with the car references.
Oh, God. Is it dead? Kyle hadn't seen his mom so hopeful since Reverend Surrey's wife miraculously came out of her diabetic coma last year. They gingerly stepped toward the spider. It was dead all right. Most of its hindquarters had been eaten out, leaving a spongy, dried-out cavity.
Anybody else thinking the baby's hatched?
The thing's dead, man. Jake whooped, pumping his fists like he'd just beaten Guitar Hero on his Xbox. It's just one of 'em, Jake. Jake sighed, then scanned the landscape. There's another one. Jake raced toward it. Kyle and his mother followed. The next spider was just as dead as the first, only not gorged upon, and it was twisted into what could be described as a fetal position for a spider. They're dead. Yeah. Die, you things die. Kyle and his
things, that was me substituting again.
Mom were a bit unnerved by Jake's manic, frothing enthusiasm, but things did appear promising. Especially after they found yet another carcass nearby.
Especially,
And then another, and another. Dozens of them, all leading up to the mysterious dark spot nearing in the distance. It's over, man. It has to be. Bet they couldn't breathe our air because of germs or gases or something. Yeah. Could be. Kyle still thought Jake's alien theory was moronic, but it didn't seem to matter much now. Mrs. Graves began to laugh, tears welling in her eyes. It's over, she moaned. Thank you, Lord. They approached the dark spot cautiously. It turned out to be a massive hole, as wide as a baseball diamond, bordered with short mounds of crimson-colored dirt. They peered into it. Its sides were smooth and plunged straight downward into pitch blackness. A bottomless pit, Kyle thought. Jake thought it looked like the Earth's. Looks like a big hole, he said. How deep do you think it goes?
Apologies, I missed that one.
Mrs. Graves asked. Could be miles, Kyle figured. Jake scooped up a whopper-sized stone and dropped it into the hole. They listened. Heard nothing. Damn. Wouldn't want to fall into there. Best step back, boys. That was when they heard it. A dull rumble, much like an approaching freight train. But they knew in their hearts what it was, The thunderous battering of thousands of monster tarantula claws scrambling up the hole toward them. Oh, crap! Jake frantically unshouldered his rifle and lifted it, but was shuddering too bad to aim or even finger the trigger. Kyle watched him and mused to himself, how much damage could a bullet do to a rampaging horde of giant spiders anyway? Frustrated and freaking, Jake flung his rifle aside and ran like hell back towards town. Kyle knew he wouldn't get very far.
I'm just letting it run because we're running out of time.
Kyle hugged his mother tight. She did the same to him. The thunder grew louder, almost deafening. The ground quaked beneath them. "Should be quick, Mom," Kyle whispered soothingly into her ear. "They like to go for the head." And then, shutting their eyes, they hugged each other tighter.
What? That's where it ends? You gotta be kidding me. Wow. You lost a lot of the comedy at the end there. Like, I just wasn't getting it as much as we were in the beginning. It was glorious in the beginning, and then at the end, you really dropped the ball, man. Man, you really dropped the ball, man. I think you had so much potential early on, and you gave up halfway through. Why is this such a tragedy ending? I mean, even in Shaun of the Dead, the guy's best friend, well, spoiler alert, the guy's best friend becomes a zombie at the end. They're still playing video games together anyway because they just make it work. It's, even with the tragedy, comedy and tragedy are two different things. Mel Brooks put it like this. He goes, tragedy is when I cut my finger, and comedy is when you fall in an open sewer and die. Basically, trauma. So the trauma that happens, the reader should not feel loss at the end of a comedy. They should feel gain. Okay, you kind of went the other way there. Right. It's 9:00. It's time to get out of here. Final thoughts. Lots of potential here. This was a very funny horror comedy story to start, with a lot of silliness that really made for great potential, and then it lost its footing. You had a lot of things that were old, didn't age well. I have a feeling this is an older writer, and things that worked 20, 30 years ago, those jokes are not going to land today. And you're going to get flack for it. I don't think you personally intended anything negative, and you're not trying to be that way. This is just, adapting to new times and adapting to what your readers are looking for. And as I said before, don't judge a writer based on their first drafts. They're just going with their gut instincts at first. And hopefully, once they get these sensitivity reads, they can clean that up, and the final product won't have that issue. That's all I have for today. Hopefully you enjoyed that. Thanks again for watching, and don't forget to like and subscribe. New episodes normally are streaming Wednesdays. I filmed Tuesday today because I'll be at a birthday party tomorrow night, so won't be available for streaming tomorrow. But normally every Wednesday, 7 to 9 p.m. on Twitch, and then I'll edit and upload this episode to YouTube within a couple of days. And if you'd like, feel free to check me out on Manuscript Massacre, www.manuscriptmassacre.com. Sign up for the Discord where you can submit your own stuff and join the community. Until next time, cheers all.